It is not just a problem that you are going to find in the downtown east side of Vancouver anymore.
You get disconnected from your family, you get disconnected from your job, you get disconnected from your friends, you get disconnected from everything except for that substance.
Welcome back to Steele and Vance. We're talking about addiction, opioid crisis, the toxic drug supply, and Toxic, a documentary.
This was just screened for some MLAs, and I think that it should actually be screened at every school. It should be mandatory viewing because we are in the middle of a public health crisis that appears to be just getting worse. We can't seem to get a handle on it, and everybody's fighting over things like decriminalization and safe supply and what is the answer. And one of the people in this documentary is someone we've had on the show before. I just want to run a little clip of Guy Fellicella. He is a recovering addict, and he plays a role in this documentary.
I was a piece of garbage. In society's eyes, I was just another drug addict, criminal, that didn't obey the law.
What a story he has to tell.
Yeah, I mean, Guy's done so much. He's in the studio now, again for the second time. Thanks for coming in, Guy.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me about the screening for the MLAs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty powerful, raw, emotional film. It'll, really get your emotions going and make you angry, and it should, because, sadly this is just ongoing for the last, longer than 8 years, but, since it's been declared a public health emergency, and, the drug supply is toxic.
Before we get to dealing with the toxic drug supply, what should be done and isn't being done for people who suffer from addiction, can you just give our viewer who maybe doesn't understand or know your story? We saw that clip right there where you're like, I was garbage, and then your story is one that is so important, especially because who saved your life?
Yeah, I mean, I struggled, childhood trauma, had challenges growing up, undiagnosed learning disabilities, and really fell into, using substances, at a very early age. I was, wanting to end my life, and, at 12 years old, drugs saved my life, but what I didn't understand at 12 years old, what no 12-year-old boy could understand, is the progression of those drugs were going to turn into drugs that were going to try to end my life. And, I fell into the downtown east side of Vancouver, and I just really got trapped, in an environment of, living to use and using to live drugs to really kind of numb myself from the way I felt about myself. I had a tremendous amount of shame. I couldn't understand. Like, I was always trying to get sober, I just could never figure it out. Like, I was good at getting sober, just never good at staying sober. And I was always trying, though. And, and then the last overdose, which was February 18th, 2013, where I was at the supervised consumption site. And when I've never remembered overdosing. I just remember waking up. And this time when I opened my eyes, the nurse was like visibly emotional. And I said, "Why are you crying?" And she said, "Because I care." And I just burst into tears. And I said, I gotta stop doing this. And I just basically knew that I was either gonna die in my addiction or gonna die trying to get out. And so, luckily for me, those harm reduction services got me into recovery and treatment. And they were always there, and that's where I always talk about the continuum of care of having, access to recovery services and having a harm reduction safety net underneath, because it is a chronic relapsing condition, and you just don't go in once and get better.
Right. And it's interesting because Vancouver's just been at the forefront of harm reduction, decriminalization, safe supply, and just, the politicians and the NDP and Dr. Bonnie Henry just getting attacked like crazy from people who say, you're killing people, you're giving people toxic drugs, you're the problem,
right.
Is what they're saying to people who are trying to resolve it. What do you make of that political fight?
It's really sad for me, the politicalizing of people who are struggling. It really is, sad, like where it comes into votes or a power dynamic. I think BC is trying to do whatever it takes to try to remove people from dying. And I think sometimes you'll have to do bold things, and maybe the public won't agree with it, but honestly, I think, we have to do something to really stop the deaths.
When you talk about how many times you tried to get sober, how many times you tried to white knuckle your way through your addiction without resolving what brought you as that 12-year-old boy to drugs in the first place, where are we falling down as a society?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's the prevention side of things, or understanding. Like, you have to ask too. It's like, why do people use drugs or need drugs? And there's a various amount of reasons. But like, I wasn't a social drug user. I was a get wasted drug user.
Right.
And so when you are looking at that kind of a drug user, there's like anybody that struggles with addiction, there's childhood trauma, there's trauma involved here. And so, you have to address those underlying issues of trauma in order to treat the addiction.
And the availability of that service is not for everybody. I mean, it costs to have a therapist, almost prohibitively, if you can access one.
Yeah, if the people who probably, we all could probably use a little trauma therapy in
100%.
our life. And sadly, for the people who really need it, can't afford it. And so, there's no access. And so we have to do a better job at making it somewhat of a healthcare. If this is a health issue, we should just be diving in and saying, okay, let's just do all aspects of health.
I don't want to make it political, but it is political. And we talk about Alberta going in a completely different direction than BC, where they said we're going to put all our chips in on rehab. We're not going to do harm reduction. We're not going to do safe supply. And last I saw, their numbers are on par with BC's.
Yeah.
So there's the same number of people dying. So what does that tell us?
Well, it tells us that we haven't removed people from the toxic drug supply. And until we actually are able to do that with, multiple avenues and options, sadly, this will just continue.
When we're looking at case studies, in your very learned and informed opinion, are there places that we can point to that are doing a better job than what we're doing here? Because while we do talk about it being a downtown east side, issue, there's a population of people who struggle for sure, but it's a bedroom community issue. There are a lot of people who are using shamefully alone, hiding it from their families, and have no idea how to take that step. Like, what can we actually do to help, in your opinion?
Well, I think, this is on us as people as well. Like, education, get educated, get naloxone trained. This is
Right.
the times that we live in. You have to have a kit. You have to carry it, and you have to know how to use it. And that should go right through the schools, because every workforce, every place needs to understand just how, today you may save a life. And having it attached to your bag when you're in a grocery store, start the conversation with the person behind you. I mean, we just got to start talking about it, because, not talking about it or wishing it to go away does not make it go away.
Are you concerned about empathy fatigue? Because we're living it, we're seeing it day after day after day, and it starts to become normalized, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't be. And when you talk about carry around naloxone, I live downtown, I walk around downtown all the time, and I see people, and I'm not sure, is the person, sometimes they don't want to be bugged or touched, or, hey, are you okay? And I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, there is people, but I mean, as a person, even when I'm walking by, I can, just look at signs, see if the chest is beating,
Right.
Moving, and, those are fine. No lips are blue, then you're pretty much okay, right? Like, you just really have to just be looking and be aware that, it is happening.
Interestingly enough, and I haven't even told you this, is yesterday I was at the grocery store, underground parking lot, parked my car and saw a gentleman in his car, slumped in the seat, wasn't sure, and I did. I went and I just watched to see if his chest was rising and falling. And when you talk about the naloxone kit, I should be teaching my 16-year-old.
Yeah.
He should, and we can just get them at a pharmacy, right? You can just ask for a kit, and then you do training online. Is that how it works?
Yeah, you can do that, or you can go into a harm reduction services and get trained too. And you could, honestly, you could also ask the pharmacist if they have time. They could possibly do it. Just depends on how busy it is.
It's not that complicated, though, is it?
No.
Okay.
I walked around in some of the back alleys of the downtown east side with a couple of pulleys from the Odd Squad a few years ago, and was kind of shocked, and it was only like 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night, was shocked at some young people, some young girls who were walking by just looking lost, and you're thinking, oh my God. And then we saw new numbers out this week saying 126 young people and children have died of overdoses.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
And it's heartbreaking. I mean, you know, and it goes to show as well that kids are using the toxic drug supply. And so, you know, it's not a new phenomenon. Kids use drugs. I think, you know, the scary part is that we really, really have to inform kids on all the aspects of the toxic drug crisis. And two, listen, one of the things as well is that, you know, informing people of what's going on doesn't encourage drug use, right? But if people are using substances, they have to know that they can't use those substances alone. Yeah, that's
the message. As a mother of a 16-year-old who's like, you're spreading this, because I grew up in an era where if you experimented with drugs, it wasn't like Russian roulette with a loaded gun. That's what we're looking at now.
Yeah.
It's different now. Yeah. It's not like, oh, I think I might take this pill and see what happens.
Yeah.
It might actually be pill, ground, dead.
Yeah.
Right?
And they don't, sometimes too as well, is when kids are buying substances off the street, it could be contaminated with fentanyl. So it's like nobody knows anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, and people say, well, I got it from a reputable... There's no such thing.
No.
You know, people like you are doing a lot. There's a lot of people doing a lot and trying to save lives and making a difference and educating. And again, I'm cycling it back to the man who very likely might be the next prime minister is being harsh, and his rhetoric around drug use and harm reduction is
scary.
Yeah, I mean, what do you make of it?
Like I said, it's sad for me, you know, as a person who struggled for many years, right? Like, you know, it's not inspiring, it's unhelpful for this rhetoric to continue. And if you are going to be, you know, the next Prime Minister of Canada, you know, or anyone, you really have to consider and have all pathways to care involved in this thing. And if we don't have harm reduction, I mean, if British Columbia didn't have the harm reduction services that it does, I swear we'd have a lot more people dying.
You'd probably be dead.
I would be dead, yeah. Like
we've all lost people. And that's the part that is wild, is that it's not a homeless issue, it's not a poverty issue, it's a drug issue, tainted drug supply, and lack of supports for those. Like you've mentioned so many times how, you know, it started with even just needle exchanges. How many lives that saved?
Yeah.
But their pushback was huge, politically speaking, because you got to be the leader of all the people, not just the people who fit into your fancy program.
Let's talk about the documentary and where people might be able to see it, because there is a public screening coming up. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so our next public screening is at the Coquitlam Library, June 18th, 6:30. You can go on the Coquitlam Library website to get in there. We hope to, you know, meet the community and all walks of lives, and people are welcome to show up. And
what age would you recommend sees this? Like what?
Oh, I mean, I think grade 8, not all ages. Yeah. I mean, hey, you know, people when I go into high schools too as well, I showed the trailer. Every single kid wants to see the film.
Right.
And you know what? As a teenager, when I was in high school, the drunk driving stuff resonates with me today. Kids need to see the reality, and they need to talk to someone with lived experience.
Correct.
100%.
So thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks.
Best luck to you, and go Oilers, because we're both Oilers fans. I know I gotta work it in every interview.
I just tune it right out. I'm like, click, it's over.
Guy Fellicella, thank you so much.
They were talking Oilers like the entire time as we were setting up. It was great. Guy, we love you, and we thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Guys.
Okay, still ahead. The verdict is in, and Donald Trump is guilty on all counts.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. We are going to take you to New York when we come back.
But first, our viewing party. Yes, indeed, the fun continues on every show. Steve and Aaron in Coquitlam, you are entered.
There's some Canucks fans. Penny in Langford, thanks for sending the photo of the pup.
We got Edith and Ari in Burnaby.
Another cute pup.
And
dogs. Belinda in New Westminster doing some yoga.
I love this for us. Viewing party at CHEKmedia.ca is where you send your picture of you watching us. You might win a great night out.